Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Tuesday Night Live. We got there in the end, just one or two technical hitches as usual, but here we are, and joining me are two sad and sorry warriors. First of all, Macca, how you going, Mac?
Yeah, I had an operation yesterday, and I'm on painkillers for tonight, so I could be even more stupid than normal. So
It
that's
might be the most sense you've ever made.
We'll just have to wait and see.
And Peter, how you going, Pete? You're not so good either.
No, mate, I'm one better than Mac. I've had an operation today, so I'm still just trying to come out of the effects of the general anaesthetic. So if I'm incoherent, well, then I guess everything's just normal.
See, the funny thing about that is now I'm under a load of pressure because if I don't make sense and you blokes do make sense, then I'm under the influence of nothing except half a glass of red. So,
you're in strife, mate.
Yeah, you're exposed, mate. You're exposed.
I'm definitely exposed. Oh, dear. Never mind. Look, let's crack it right into it. Donkey might be with us at some stage. He's gone a bit AWOL, Donkey. I don't know what the hell's going on with him. He's got something going on out there. But let's crack into the news, shall we? You'd be all across it, wouldn't you, Pete?
Yeah, I've been absolutely all across it today. And just a quick shout out to everyone in the chat room, of course. Great to have you all along. And Moyley just asking what is it with all the mid-season ops. I think the cast took a view, Moyley, that we thought that the best thing to do was to get us in for operations early so that we're all good to go for a finals appearance, CrowCast, as we go towards the end of the year. I think that was the idea, wasn't it, Macca?
Yeah, no, you're spot on there, mate. Spot on.
I thought the idea was the season was over, so let's get everyone in.
Dear, oh dear. Well, looking at the news, in a major bit of news for the Adelaide Crows Football Club, and its number one draft pick, unfortunately, Brendan Bolton was dismissed from Carlton. Was that today or yesterday? I can't remember which day it was, but was it today?
Yeah.
Yesterday.
It was yesterday, was it? So that was, obviously that's the biggest news going around at the moment. It was obviously huge, and a lot of people would say not unexpected. But what I'm really, I guess, happy about, not for him. I think he obviously seems like a pretty genuine and good bloke, and obviously did his best in difficult circumstances. What I'm liking though is I'm liking that the media really does seem to be putting pressure on the club as a whole and asking questions, given the fact that they've sacked Brendan Bolton, they've sacked Mick Moldhouse before him.
He's away already.
Brett Ratton,
Malt Milkshake, Brett Ratton. There's a list. There's a list of them, and they continually sack their coaches, and nothing happens. But nobody seems to be asking the hard questions of the board, or in particular the list manager.
Yeah. I actually thought that I don't know whether you caught it, Pete, but Chris Judd was under the blowtorch a little bit last night, and he was pretty sensitive about the whole thing, really pretty touchy. And his job as the football director, and he's saying, "Well, I'm really a hands-off sort of a guy, and I'm not in charge of the rank and file and all that." And it's like, well, dude, you're carrying the badge and you're getting the pay packet. Surely the buck
pretty
stops.
Poor response.
Very poor
response.
response.
That's what, he did say that, and you're quite right. He was trying to disassociate himself from it.
Yep.
And the very fact that he said the week before that he couldn't see Bolton going during the season, and then when he was challenged on that, he made the comment, "Well, the sensible thing is if things change, then you change." But just in a week. I think he was
nothing happens in a week.
I must admit, the listless performance they gave up on the weekend was terrible. And I did say on Sunday night, I was feeling sad because I was sure we were going to lose Bolts. And that did happen. But, look, these boys are above Bolts. They have to take the rap too. Sauce is the man that has got the chain of supply. There's a chairman there who's totally unimpressive, and there's been calls for his head by the Carlton supporters, etc., for a long time now, and the press don't have any opinion whatsoever. So there's a lot wrong with the club.
there's a ton wrong with that club. There's cultural issues, and they're an old staid club doing things the old staid way, and there's lots of old money tied up, and therefore opinions bought, etc., etc. And I guess a coach is only ever as good as his record, and I suppose that at the end of the day, Bolton's record didn't stand up. I think he's got the second worst coaching record of all time for coaches that have coached over 80 games. So, but that would be a fair enough observation if it was in isolation. But that club has been in the doldrums for years and years and years through mishandling and stuff-ups and all sorts of things.
Dishonesty.
Yep, and the club at some stage has to have a look at itself.
Yep. They see themselves as one of the great big Victorian clubs, and to some extent they are. But doesn't you can be big and you can be around for a long time, but you can still be a heap of crap.
Yep, absolutely. And Josh Quinn in the chat, and welcome everyone on Facebook chat, makes a very good point. Is he worth looking at as an assistant? I'd have him in a heartbeat, to be honest.
Yeah, no question at all. And I think Damien Harwick said the same thing. He said it. He would be welcome at any time under the Richmond Football Club. I can't remember the exact quote, but he certainly said words to that effect. And I absolutely would agree with you that you would have thought that he would be a much sought after assistant.
Yeah, look, if he's good enough for Clarkson, he's good enough for us. That's the way I look at it.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, the amount of IP he's got and the experience that he's had, despite not having a good record, the experience that he's had coaching his own club now. He's coached teams at other levels as well. There's actually not very many coaches on the market at the moment with that level of experience. Do you think he gets a crack at the North gig?
No.
Too soon.
Yeah.
But he probably will get picked up somewhere as assistant coach, and I think there's one social advantage of picking him up is he makes all the small guys feel tall.
Oh, Macca, mate.
I think Brett Ratton sets the template for the sack coach, doesn't he? Because he just goes away and quietly becomes, a highly regarded assistant, and he's come full circle now. I mean, you would think now Brett Ratton would be one of the most in-demand head coaches going around.
Yep.
But what surprised me about Ratton, I think that Ratton probably would make a good coach these days. And I thought he was a reasonable coach before, and he's had a lot of time to look at other ways of doing things. And but for some reason, he doesn't seem to get considered.
Well, he's not going to get considered. Would he consider even going to Carlton now?
I don't know.
I don't think he would.
I wouldn't have thought so. I would have thought once bitten, twice shy. Although, he's a Carlton man. You never know. I mean,
maybe with a board shift he might. Maybe with fresh faces around he might. But they've got a pretty good incumbent. We know David Teague from his days at Adelaide got things going pretty well in the forward line. The blokes in the Spreaker chat are already trying to sell off Camporelli to go home as a favourite son. Can't see that happening. Brad Scott is obviously going to be in the mix, but I don't know whether he's the right option either.
That's an interesting one, isn't it, that he's rated so highly when he's been a dud for 10 seasons?
Well, yeah, I agree, Mac. I do. And if Reece Shaw can get the bloody Kangaroos up for a win in his first game, then you got to question what Brad Scott's been. You got to wonder what Brad Scott's been doing for the last 9 seasons. God.
Yeah, well, you have to know Reece can barely speak English, and then he's got him up. So
yeah, that's right.
What a trade though, Campo for pick 1. I mean, jeez.
Oh, wouldn't that be fantastic? That's the steak knives right there. Oh
Great
shit!
Stuff.
Look, yeah. So lots to go down, and I think the media are onto this with both barrels at the moment. I don't think they're going to let Carlton off the hook this time. I think there's going to be a lot of scrutiny. I wouldn't mind betting that their chairman goes by the end of the week. I think Chris Judd will survive because Chris Judd, but there's a lot to go down there, I reckon.
Yeah,
I think they actually have to hand over that number 1 or 2 draft pick. Surely some heat goes on Sauce at that point when it becomes a real thing.
Yeah. Well, Sauce really should go, shouldn't he? I mean, he's the chain of command where he's the link where they come in from, and so they've had good draft picks because of the fact they've been performing so poorly on the field. But I did see a list of the rubbish that he's traded in, like Gorringe, etc., and there was about 10 of them. And, you wouldn't use them in your reserves, let alone pay them at A grade, yet he's traded them in. So, I don't think he's a list manager's backside, to be honest.
and Tommy in the Facebook chat, sorry, just to finish this one off, Pete. Tommy in the Facebook chat makes a very good point in that there's not much around if Scott's the front runner. And it begs the question, what was Carlton's plan by bailing on Bolton? Was there any benefit to them in bailing on him so early in the season? Because unless you've got a target, surely you'd hang on to him.
Well, no, not really, because they've got rid of the fall guy. He's the fall guy. He's taken it all. He said that he was actually implementing their plan. I think the upper crust knew that they couldn't keep Bolton on with the performances that were there. I mean, he's only won 2 games last year, and that's out of 22. And he's kept the pro rata up this year when they're supposed to be improving. 1 out of 11 is the same ratio. So I think they had no alternative. Just ignore the fact that they are a heap of crap. They had to get rid of him, otherwise they would publicly show they are a heap of crap.
Nah, I don't buy it, Mac. The plan, I think, was that Teague comes in. I wouldn't mind betting that Teague's appointed, to be honest.
Well, and
I think that's why he left.
I'm not going to disagree on that point. Yeah. Look, you could well be right. Because Teague was quality while he was here.
Yep.
The people over there can probably see that he's actually better than the man he was reporting to. So unless they do land a reasonably good coach from another club, I think he would be every chance of getting the job if. And I think sadly they might perform better, which this is what I was sad about the departure of Bolts, because Teague, I think, will get a couple of wins out of this block.
Yeah, and Stuart Glatz in the Spreaker chat has said Nicky called it, and the fewer references to Nicky getting anything right, the better. Thanks, guys. We do not need Nicky having her tyres pumped up. So, we might ban you, Stuart, if you keep going like that.
Quite right.
Yeah.
Moving on to another big story from the week that was just breaking today. Of course, it's the 20th anniversary of the tragedy of Tiananmen Square in China, and yet another transport-related tragedy took place in China over the weekend, where estimated 10,000 people who were supposed to be at a game strangely got lost on buses going missing to the wrong ground.
went missing.
They went missing, so I don't know if they were crushed under tanks or what happened, but an absolute tragedy, because it meant that incredibly, and you wouldn't credit this, it could be true, that they only had 9,000 people at one of the most popular games on the calendar. Just incredible that would happen. Gil, the AFL put out 10,000. Fox Sports was reporting around about 500 people went to the wrong. And that's true. That's true.
Is that right?
Fox Sports, Fox Sports said they understand it was about 10 buses that went to the wrong oval. And I think Jared Healy asked a very, very reasonable question about when he said, well, just exactly how many AFL grounds are there in Shanghai?
Yeah, that's right.
I think that was a fairly reasonable question for Jared to have asked. But no, the AFL are now telling us that they were sure there was going to be 20,000 people at the Adelaide Stadium in Shanghai, and but we only ended up with 9,000 people. So no, it wasn't that the fact that they were all in the hospitality tents outside the ground. This year they got lost.
And
can you imagine what will happen next year?
Oh.
And the crap that was being spun was how good this is to see that 10,000 Chinese are going to come to see this game, and of course everybody knew there was going to be no Chinese there. There's going to be expats mainly who did come. And
Extraordinary.
the other thing too is that, with the absence of the crowd, the excuse that's always given they were in the hospitality tent. But I have never seen, and has anybody either on the panel here or in the chat, has anybody ever seen a photo of these hospitality tents?
You
No.
would think it'd be like the Melbourne Cup, before the big race, and they go into the hospitality tents and they're rubbing shoulders with the rich and famous, and everyone's having a tank full of moe and all that. You'd think that Fox would be getting in dumplings, definitely dumplings. You got to take that happy juice more often, mate. You'd think that the roving Brian might be in there, although it's a Fox game, but it's clearly bullshit. It's clearly bullshit.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It totally is. The other talking about bullshit, Koshy. I heard him on the radio, and I saw it also in print, where he was challenged about this particular game and the wisdom of having it. And he said, have a look at our accounts. There's $6 million worth of income that wouldn't be there if it wasn't for this game. Mm. And, of course, then we've got poor old Keith Thomas, who's an honest guy. He's on 5AA. This is after Koshy's bullshit. He said that he admitted that they'd be struggling to break even on the game. So what Koshy doesn't mention, yes, there could be $6 million worth of income, but there's going to be a greater amount of expenses there.
Yeah. So income isn't net revenue, is it?
It's net revenue. And look, I wish the AFL would just and then if they're going to target overseas, which I think is quite silly at the moment when you've got problems like the Gold Coast, etc., surely they should be targeting India where they do actually have ovals that they could actually play on, cricket ovals.
Well, it's been renamed Adelaide Stadium now.
Well,
which is quite funny,
wasn't it?
Why wouldn't they call it Port Adelaide Stadium? Why would they call it Adelaide Stadium?
Apparently that's what they call it.
Wrong team.
Yeah, would you like to see it called Port Adelaide near you?
Well, no, but that's the team that's trying to win all their hearts, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, look, let's move on.
Anyway, moving along.
Well, the good thing is that the Port have played the grand final, so that's it for them now.
There was the standard weekly have a whack at Tech's article for this time from the list manager himself, Terry Wallace. So obviously he's gotten over those prelim final losses back in 97, 98, and he still manages to sink the boots into Tech. So good on you.
I was actually very concerned for Terry, Peter, and I just want to bring the cast into a very serious note here. But
yes, please do.
Yeah. Terry said that he was very concerned, that he was sincerely concerned. Now, does this mean that Terry's not getting enough sleep? Is he up at night worried about? Has he been on the phone to Tex? Has he, obviously it's affecting Terry emotionally. And so I don't think we should be talking about Tex. I think we should be talking about Terry Wallace's well-being.
Yeah, I got that vibe too.
Yeah,
I definitely got that vibe too.
Yeah, it's a worry. I'm concerned for Terry. He's clearly very emotionally invested in our captain's performances. And all I can say from all of us here at CrowCast, get well soon, Terry.
Well, from you two, anyhow.
I love
it. What a load of shit. What a load of shit. I don't reckon Terry Wallace has watched more than 15 minutes of our games this season. He's full of shit.
No, and the amount of people that like to have a pot shot and don't watch the games and don't look at the record, don't look at the statistics. It's just anyway. I've been banging my head against a brick wall all week about this, and so I'm not going to go any further. There a little bit of injury news that's relevant to us. Lockie Whitfield went in for surgery today on a broken collarbone, so he is well and truly out of Saturday's game. Which is a significant out, a very, very significant out.
Yeah,
huge
for
out.
US.
You spotted him a few weeks ago, didn't you, Macca, that he was integral to them?
Yeah, so they go 100 times better when he's in the team.
Yep.
So massive loss for GWS. And finally, my last little bit of injury news, just the Crows released today that they expect Rory Sloane to be 50-50 for this week. There's only a grade 1 hamstring tear, and my thought would be they wouldn't play him and then play him 5 days later against Richmond, but who knows? But I wouldn't have thought that he'd play.
Yeah, your common sense says it'd be you wouldn't, would you? Because if he's not good enough to be on the ground on last week, he's not going to heal that quickly.
Look, hamstrings are 3 weeks. I don't care whether you got Steve Saunders and bloody Kangatek on the park or not. It doesn't matter whether it's a grade 1, 3, 5 or whatever. It's minimum 3 weeks. 2 weeks and then one more just for good luck. And I would expect Sloaney before the bye, to be honest with you.
No, that sounds fair.
But Sauce had a good run in the twos, so I'd expect that he might be pushing for selection.
Outstanding effort in the twos, actually. Not just a good effort, an outstanding effort. And he was actually jumping off the ground, which was amazing because I hadn't seen him do that for a long, long time. So, he was far too good, obviously, in that competition. He monstered his opposition in that game and plus kicked goals. So, look, Ryan O'Brien, I think, has done a good job. He got absolutely monstered in the middle by Gawn because Gawn huge and strong and
well,
he can also
he
leap.
didn't Macca. The stats say otherwise. He didn't get monstered.
No, but physically I thought he got monstered. He just crashing into him. But I thought at the boundaries, Rob O'Brien did very, very well. Anyhow, look, I would probably pay Sauce, but I'm not going to be distressed if he has to wait another week. Either way with me.
Yeah, because it's just a really, really good time to have both ruckman fit and in form because you've got this really, really difficult, I think, 5-day break, and you've got really, really quality opposition. And so between the two of them, between those two ruckmen, we should be able to manage a situation where we've got in both games we've got a fresh ruckman.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yep, no, that's true. And the other interest I guess from the injury point of view is whether Matt Crouch's 1 week hip injury comes up after 3 weeks.
Well, they're making the same noises as they have done for the last 2 weeks, and that is that he's just about ready to go. So
yeah, sadly, they have with made the same noises they did last year. Actually, that where every like a 1 week injury was always turned into about 3 or 4. So, but you'd think that he probably would be over it this week.
Well, if he's not, then it's not a simple hip injury, in my opinion. They can be nasty, and they do sometimes take a little bit of getting over. But 3 weeks turning into 4 weeks, if he's not back this week, then there's a problem, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, well, that's about all for the news. And before we move on to our match talk, obviously I need to say thank you very much to Ryan at Smith Partners Real Estate for their support of the cast. Also Down to Earth Electrical for all your electrical data and air conditioning needs. Thanks to Scorpus, who runs Hardware Unbox on YouTube. Go and check him out if you're looking for some tech stuff. And, of course, all our patrons on Patreon. We really do appreciate your support. And as I mentioned on Sunday night, Peter, the lighting on the Rev Up was 1,000% better this week, which was
I didn't catch the Rev Up on Saturday, so that's great. Good news.
There was a reason why the lighting was really shit on the Rev Up. It was because my head was on there. But unfortunately, we had to improve the lighting. And thanks to the support of the people on Patreon, we were able to get some new lights, and they worked a treat. So we do really appreciate that. And let's move on to some match talk now, shall we? Now, Macca and I have had our say, Pete, and I have a feeling I know what you're going to say, but have at it, mate.
Oh, well, I'm all Captain Positive at the moment.
You're up and about.
I'm up and about, and look, honestly, I think there's a good reason to be up and about. I really do, and I said similar last week, and I'll say it again this week, and that is that, as a supporter and as someone who has long been critical of this playing list and its what's the word I'm trying to look? Its propensity to fall away, and when the game's not on their terms, to effectively just decide that they're not going to turn up and that it's really too hard. And we all know that those games where where they've done that, important games where they've just from the first bounce, you can pretty much tell in the first 5 minutes that they're not there and they're not interested, and they lose by 40 points, and horrible performances like that. Now, no one's going to shy away from the fact that Melbourne were absolutely red hot in that first half. They were unbelievable,
Which they were going to be.
Yeah, that's right, and it reminded me very much of the at the Alice Springs game last year, the way that they were able to spread us to all parts of the ground, and their ball movement was unbelievable. I think I might have put on Twitter, I think that it was that really it's just a case of just hoping that they go off, hanging in, hoping they go off the boil, because I just don't think you can play like that for 4 quarters, particularly in that heat.
Their ability to go. Sorry, Peter. I was to say the ability to go just a backup. You're saying from coast to coast, just like a hot knife through butter in that first half, wasn't it?
I mean, it was. I mean, look, if you're looking at it objectively, it was just magnificent to watch. Really was the way that they moved the ball, and their foot skills. They just weren't missing targets at all. We just weren't getting a sniff in terms of turnover, and so full credit to Melbourne. But what was really, really good is that even though they were so good, we managed to sort of, in the first quarter, we still kicked 4 goals, so that we were only 15 points down at quarter time, when really, on the trend of the game, you would have thought we would be a lot further down. But, some good kicking for goal and just hanging in there. We obviously, so I didn't think that the first quarter was that bad because the fact that we hung in. Second quarter was dreadful, of course. But then then the second half we kick 8 of the last 9 goals, and we kick 5 goals to 1 in the last quarter. Now, obviously, if you want to be really, really, I guess, negative about it, you can say, well, Melbourne lost it, and they, because they kicked all those points. Well, I guess the counter to that, guys, is that we pressured them and hung in there for a large part of the game. It was hot conditions, and they were under pressure. We put them under significant pressure, physical and psychological pressure that last quarter, because from their perspective, they couldn't possibly lose that game. And yet, there they were in a blink of an eye. They were a few points down, and the pressure just seemed to get to them a bit. They kicked 3 or 4 points at around about that time where they should have kicked goals, and I think that's credit to us that we that they had to win the game back when they had it in their safe keep. So. Look, I couldn't be. I mean, I was thrilled after the game that we'd come away with the points, and the fact that this side has finally got some heart and some courage to hang in when you haven't got the game on your terms, and I thought that they showed that against Brisbane. I mean, obviously West Coast was a horror show in the second half, but I just figure, look, we all lauded West Coast last week when they came back from 5 goals down, and I think that we should laud the Crows that they were able to do that on Saturday.
Yeah, that's a fair comment. I think the 8 out of 9 goals, I think that definitely is shows that we did turn the game around. We probably had given them too much.
We didn't, because it was 12 scoring shots to 15. Let's be honest.
Yes, but we weren't getting. Yes, but if we had played like we did in the first half, we wouldn't have got those 8 goals. We looked pretty pathetic in that first half. I'm with Pete to a certain degree, not as bullish as he is, but partially with him, in the sense that at least we did have the courage to fight back, whereas there have been many times when we haven't done that.
But I just remember, I mean, not this year, but I can remember last year we would sit here and we'd talk about this issue on the cast, and we'd say, "Can you remember a game where we were down and we came back?" And do you remember we would talk about that, and you couldn't find one.
Look, I don't disagree with you, Peter, but I don't think it was as much as we came back as we hung in, which is good in and of itself, because I think Melbourne's aggression and their run and their adventurousness in terms of their ball movement completely dried up after half-time. I think we made a couple of really telling positional moves. I think Sloan going off in the second quarter really affected us because Oliver just went crazy. And putting Gibbs on him in the second half was a very good move. A very highly paid tagger, but nonetheless, he did his job, and that did slow them down. I also thought that we slowed down their bounce off halfback. Hibbert and that stopped having as much of an influence coming out of defence. But that said, there were a couple of key indicators that says to me that it wasn't so much about our pressure as maybe perceived pressure on Melbourne's behalf. I think they shat the bed, to be honest with you, and we were good enough.
I think
They did.
I agree.
We were good enough to still be in the game. But when you kick, 3 goals 12 in the second half to 9 goals 3, you're going to struggle to win the game. So, look, there were too many things wrong, Pete, and even our ball movement in the last quarter. Because in the third quarter it was a stalemate. Because we could not move the ball quickly. We could not get through their zone. We ended up kicking, 4 goals or whatever, but it was hard bloody yakka, and it was only really when they tied in the last and we were able to bustle the ball forward, because our ball movement still wasn't all that clean.
No.
But we were able to bustle the ball forward and win a couple of key 50-50s. And we were able to lob in front. And you take the win. Simple as that. Take the win.
Yeah. There's no doubt, Fiend, it was ugly as you like. I mean, there wasn't, there was just no comparison between Melbourne at their best and us and our best. So the football for them to get out to their 30-point lead is not comparable to the football that we played to cut that 30-point lead, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It was game not in our terms. It was ugly. It was, and a lot of those goals in the last quarter that we got, as you say, Jenkins made a couple of really good contests in the last quarter. It was all just a bit scrappy and ugly, but we just managed to push the ball forward and create some chances and take them. And so there's no wallpaper. From my perspective, I don't think you can't wallpaper over the cracks, and because you can be. I think you can be elated and ecstatic at the end of the game that we managed to pull that out of the fire. But then, of course, you do have to look at. You can't shy away from the fact that particularly the second quarter was just was deplorable from our point of view. How much of that was the fact that Melbourne were just on? It's tricky assessing them, isn't it? Because they've still got a lot of good players and they've had a difficult season, but they've got enough good players in their side that if they get on a streak, they can. You know what I mean? They're a bit of a hiding to nothing team to play, because they're a team that where you think, well, with their position on the ladder, you should beat them. But then the reality of them is they've got some very good players still, and can put together some pretty electric passages of play.
Yeah, they've got some great players.
Yeah, and some of those players who have actually been very much down on their form had very good games on the weekend. So that's part of it, Pete. There's no doubt about that.
Yep.
Yeah. And there were a couple of funny things. I thought the inclusion of DMAC for Hardigan was a funny one. It almost seemed like we made a call that we were too tall down back, because I don't see Hardigan on the injury list. I haven't heard what was wrong with him. Was he crook?
No, I know what happened there. We actually, on the side that Melbourne named, ironically, the guy that missed the last shot wasn't in the side. And we actually thought that our defence was too tall. So we took out Hardigan.
Yeah, but you can't make a late... Do we get fined for doing that?
No, as long as they're in the emergency listing.
No, that's not true. That's not true.
This is what did happen, and we put in McKay, and when they saw that we put in McKay, they took out their small and put in their tall to mismatch it.
Well, why would we do that? Like, that's actually stupid. First of all, you can't play an emergency unless someone drops out ill or injured, right? Once you've put in the team sheet, those emergencies are there to cover late injuries or illness. You can't.
Look, I don't know the actual time that it was done at, but it was done enough in adequate time to be legit.
Well, it was only announced 2 hours before the game, I think, 3 hours before the game, that McKay was in. So it was definitely a late change. Yeah, I don't know. You can't just. I think if you do that, you cop a fine from the AFL unless it's a legit injury or illness. That's my understanding.
No, what I'm saying is actually correct because that's been stated. That's not just my opinion. That's been stated.
No. But I'm wondering what the circumstances were because there's no way that we could have
Tactical. It's meant to be tactical.
No, but Mackie, you're not hearing me. You can't put a player in unless he's replacing an injured or ill player. You can't do it.
I don't know anything about the mechanics of how it was done or when it was done, but it was done, and so something must have been legit about it to have for both teams to do it.
Well, no, Melbourne pulled out Hoare, I think it was, through injury, I believe, and we replaced DMAC with Hartigan with DMAC for no particular reason.
Well, I'm only repeating what I heard.
Yeah, well, and look, I'm not doubting that what you're saying is actually right, because that was my suspicion that it was. There's no other explanation for replacing Hartigan with a small, but the actual mechanic. I'm wondering whether we copped a fine for it, because we would have had to have basically either said that Hartigan was ill or injured, or copped a fine for making a late change. Because once your team lists are lodged, that's the only way you can make a change after that.
Well,
So interesting, and it backfired, I believe. I
felt backfired totally.
I felt that it exposed Talia, and it made Keith have to play too much on a player that we didn't get his intercept strength. And I felt that we actually missed Hartigan on the night, and we didn't get a hell of a lot out of DMAC in response. So if it was a tactical move, and I don't doubt that it was Macca, I think it was someone thinking too hard about the situation.
Well, you can't be surprised if our club pulls a tactical move and it's a stuff up.
Well, all I can say about that is that over the years, we've all seen some extraordinary measures taken in order to ensure that there's always a number 14 running around the paddock for the Adelaide Crows. And this just looked to me to be yet another extraordinary measure to ensure that there was no lack of number 14 on the team sheet.
Love child.
Yeah. No, well, look, that one was an interesting one. I felt that the selection of Atkins was an interesting selection that ultimately was shown to be flawed. Because whilst he did a few good things and picked up a lot of touches, he did his level best to give Melbourne that game with some of his stuff.
Now we said we would let Pete have his say on his.
Yeah, well, I'm just leading him in, so there you go, Pete. Have a crack.
Jeez, I'm always hovering over the Bunsen burner with the rat, aren't I?
Mm-hmm. That's why I wanted you to go first.
Look, I'm gonna be objective, and I'm gonna say that his a couple of his things that he did in the last quarter were obviously dreadful, and it was there for everybody to see. I did watch the last quarter again. He did do quite a number of good things in the last quarter.
Yes,
we got a reasonable amount of run and carry out of him.
Best quarter.
So we did get quite a few good things out of Rat in that last quarter. But you've got to balance that up, with the drop chestnut, where he obviously looked around to see what was coming, which was obviously hugely ordinary, and then the ridiculous attempt to take on a tackler when we could have been going inside 50 and end up coughing up the ball. So things like that, he lets himself down. How that affects his selection, I'm not sure. Now, let me put this to you. I was extremely surprised to look at the AFC website and see that Atkins was named sixth best. He was in the best players.
Yes, I saw that.
Who does those best players?
Well, I think that was off AFL.com, and I think they must do it just on disposals.
Right. Okay.
Because he had 27 touches.
Oh, yeah. Look, he had 27 touches, and he had 11 scoring involvements.
Yeah.
I mean, he had a team high score involvements, and so I don't know. He seems to have the confidence of the coach, because I think that he's had worse games. I think his game against Brisbane was worse, and yet he was still selected the following week. So it's a tricky one with him. He just doesn't seem to be able to get himself through a game without disgracing himself doing something.
Well, this is my problem with him in the sense that if you go through the actual talent base, he is in. If you were talking about pure sheer talent, he'd be fairly high in the list of the players at our club.
Skills wise.
Yeah, skills. Disposal, he's got superb disposal when he really concentrates on it. Has he got reasonably good pace? Yes, he has.
Not really.
But
he doesn't, Macca. That's a fallacy. His pace is a fallacy.
No, he takes lots of small steps, so it kind of looks like he's running fast. Because he always gets caught.
And he does do a lot of things that end up being good. But some of the things he's done, as you're talking about, swimming in a vital stage as well. And there's one where he took a mark, and a normal bloke there was a lead ahead of him. A normal bloke would just go on back and then pass the ball off. But he had to try and do a dodge of the weave when the player standing his mark, and he went for holding the ball. And that was just disgraceful, absolutely disgraceful. And so mentally there is something wrong with him in the sense that if he just played straight football and with a little bit more courage and only used his sidestep when absolutely necessary, then I think he could turn into a reasonable footballer. But he's the same old rat week after week, so I don't know if that's ever going to happen.
The one that I hated, Macca and Pete, was the one-handed take that he dropped running into the forward 50.
Terrible.
That was actually the one that I hated the most because it was utter lair-rising. And this leads me to my question to you, Pete. Do you think his opinion of himself is maybe a little inflated?
Oh, I think that the hair dyeing and the golden boots and all those kind of things, they're not good for me. We joke about it and sound silly, but I don't think they're great markers. I think that he's obviously, as I said, I'm pretty sure he's got the confidence of the coaching group, and I think that can lead to a little bit of, as we know, a little bit of complacency, I should say.
I don't know whether he'd have the confidence of the playing group. Do you reckon the playing group they could trust him?
That could be that could be a very different story.
Yeah,
that could be a very. Hey, can I talk about one player whose game I just loved, and it was the most bizarre. Statistically, I think this is one of the most bizarre games of football I've ever seen from a midfielder. I want to talk about the Luch, and extraordinary numbers. And I'm sure you've been through them, but I want to just go through them because I just loved the way they looked. He had 13 possessions for 6 inside 50s, 9 score involvements, 3 goal assists, a goal, and 24 pressure acts, if you don't mind.
And 380 metres gained.
380 metres gained. What was that all about?
And when at 85% disposal efficiency, Pete.
Massive potential there.
Is that the most extraordinary 13 possession game you've ever seen?
Well, yeah, and people question whether the kid can bloody play.
Yeah, from a mid I'm talking about. I mean, obviously you could get a 13 possession, 5-goal game from a forward, but from a midfielder,
well, not only that, is second rotation midfielder that's playing a bit, out of his comfort zone at times, and we got people that think he can't play. You don't know what you're looking at if you don't think that Jordan Gallucci can play. He is utterly silk under his knees.
Yeah.
He delivers the ball. He straight lines everything. He delivers the ball probably in the top 3 at the club.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you want to persevere with this kid? He's got so much going for him, and he could well be the inside-outside Rolls Royce that we're looking for, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And they just need to keep playing him.
Just keep playing him. Just keep playing him. When you get that kind of value out of his stats, and I've got no doubt that Tex would be thinking, if only I could have played 200 games with this kid in front of me.
Yeah, he's a beautiful foot pass, either foot.
Now, how did you see?
I like Magooch.
How did you see Crouchy, Pete? Because I've put my hand up and said that I think I might have negative bias towards Brad, so I'm interested to see what you thought of his game.
He had a good game. I mean, he had 29 possessions, but he kicked the ball significantly more than he handballed. I can't remember the ratio now, but I do remember that it was fairly. He was significant in terms of getting his kicks. I thought he kicked the ball a bit longer than we'd seen in previous weeks, and of course, he's come up with three crucial goals.
Yep.
And you've got to factor that into his performance. And I thought it was getting closer to the Brad that we saw. So yeah, I mean, I couldn't have been happier with his game. I thought he did. I'd much rather see him get 29 possessions, 3 goals, and however many kicks it was that he had, than 38 possessions. 38 possessions, 52 handballs.
Yeah, exactly.
that kind of game that he plays.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pleasing. I think that, and I don't know whether it's just confidence in the groin with his kicking and the leg, but I think that if it is, he certainly would have taken some confidence out of that game.
I think it's been a concerted coaching effort from what I've heard, that there's been a concerted effort to get him to put it on the boot a bit more.
Is that right? Well, look, it's a good move if they have, because he was a lot more effective with his 29 touches than he was with his 38. So, but I think he was in the best 3 players for the club on the weekend. I liked his game.
Yeah, and answering Stewie in the chat, no, I haven't had a chance to have a look at the game again, but I hope to before the weekend, because I'm interested in my own observations, and I'm quite happy to put my hand up if I'm full of it. You know how you get those players that you just don't notice?
I know.
Brad Crouch, to me, is just one of those players that I don't notice, and I'm not sure why.
What I really liked is that looking at him statistically as well, I mean, on his heat map, he gets 54% of his possessions in the defensive half, yet still kicks 3 goals for us.
Well, actually,
so he's obviously he's running the ground,
Yeah, actually, it was noticeable looking at those heat maps that how much of the game was played relatively deep in our defence. Most of our midfielders have hotspots around that half-back line. It's quite staggering. So, look, the only other one I wanted to ask you about, Peter, is Mr. Jenkins. I wanted to know how you saw him.
I thought it. Not a fan as you're not, but I don't think it can be denied that he had some. I'd put it as influential moments. Is what I'd say about Josh. I thought he had some influential moments, particularly in the last quarter. Obviously, the goal that he kicked was an excellent goal. You can't take that away from him. But I also thought that his handball goal assist to Lynch was a pretty classy handball, actually, to loop that over the top right in Lynch's path, so that Lynch could run in and kick that goal. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, was it Josh who was on the ground in that contest that spilled to Eddie, and Eddie kicked his goal? I'm not sure if it was him or not.
I think it might have been.
It was.
So for me, there's 3 really big contests that Josh makes, which is something that he hasn't done particularly well in the past. And that those 3 contests have created 3 goals.
Yeah.
And so you got to give him credit for that.
Yeah, and the comment we made on Sunday was that it's probably debatable whether we would have got those 3 contests out of Elliott, not for any other reason than Elliott's youth and probably lack of size.
Yeah, look, I
at this stage of his career, you know what I mean?
Yeah, wouldn't disagree with that at all. Now, I think he was certain, no doubt that he was due his run in the twos, and I was incredibly pleased to see the way that he responded. 15 possessions, 8 marks, and 2 goals was a really good return to the sandful for Elliott. So he'll keep percolating away. He only turned 21 today.
Anywhere. Yeah, he's not going anywhere.
No, so he only turned 21 years old today. So he's played those games for us before he even turned 21. So he's got. He doesn't need to be a dominant player till he's, you wouldn't think till he's 23, 24.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question here, both of you? Given the 2 players we've just discussed, one was Atkins, who ton of ability and looks good on the surface, I would think, to other clubs. Jenkins, who will probably play most of the year now in the full forward line, and as long as he keeps trying as he did in this game. I don't think we can win a flag this year. I think that if we keep these players, that's only going to handicap us even further. My opinion is that I would trade both of them. But what do you guys think about that?
100%, Macca. I'd play both of them enough to keep the other clubs interested, and I'd get as much as we could for both of them. And I think they've got trade value, because I think the external view of Jenkins is that he's a bit hard done by at Adelaide.
Yep.
And I don't think the interstate commentators see what we see in Atkins either. I would definitely pull the trigger on Jenkins, and I would definitely pull the trigger on Atkins.
Yeah, I think there's been a bit of smoke around Rat, certainly the last trade period. So I got a funny feeling that he wouldn't be opposed to going home, and that may even be of his own volition. So,
yep.
So I think that they would be two players certainly that you would think will be in the conversation, as well as Jake Kelly again this year. I think those three players will be in the
Well, Rat will go and
conversation.
join his mate at mate Gov at Carlton, I'd imagine.
Well, I mentioned Jake Kelly's name. I thought he had a terrific game on Saturday night.
He did have a good game. Yeah, I thought.
And that spoil in the last minute. Oh my goodness!
Outstanding. That was outstanding.
That that is. Oh, what I mean, and look, week in, week out, we sit here and we talk stats, don't we? And he got not a single stat for that, and well, he might have got a pressure act, but
you got
my
a golden
goodness
fist,
me,
I think.
what a piece of play that was.
Yep.
Yeah. And the reason I raise those two players in particular is that we've got two players, Himmelberg and Fogarty. Fogarty was a draft pick 12, not last year, but the year before, and we've actually burnt him this year, in my opinion. And no Jenkins there. These two guys get their chance up forward, and we've also got McHenry and Chase Jones, who I think should be playing and developing, and with Atkins gone, that opportunity comes for them as well.
Now, just before we continue, sorry, you guys, you can continue in a moment, but this is an interactive show, and if anyone does want to ring in, it's 722 8087. Is that what it is?
I don't know.
I should be
No idea,
prepared. Shouldn't I be prepared for this? Like, would you think that someone would actually be prepared before they started talking about it?
No.
Let me have a
look.
It's
never been our...
No, it's never been our...
never been the MO.
No.
That's never been our forte.
722 8087. If you want to ring up and have something to say, there is a crow's cap here that someone can claim with a phone call. Don't be shy. Anyway, continue, gentlemen, and if I go quiet, it's because I'm answering the bat phone.
Okay.
Don't go too quiet, Finn, because I actually wanted to set you a little bit of a task. I think being the expert list manager, Macca, I think that we're just a little bit shy actually of spine players at the moment. We've got percolating away in the twos. We've obviously got Fogarty and Himmelberg.
Yep.
Defensively, we've got Geordie Butts, and I don't know if you've had a look at Geordie yet, but he is an absolute star in the making. I love him.
He looks like he's going to be okay, doesn't he?
He is going to be an absolute ripper, is Geordie Butt. So I see him as definitely holding down a position.
Mm-hmm.
But other than those three, it's a bit bare. This is it Strachan?
It's Strawn, it's pronounced.
Strawn. So Strawn has shown a little bit, but I think we're a little bit bare, particularly with key defenders.
Yeah, not sure about Strawn, whether he'll make it or not.
There's Geordie Butts, and that's it. So really, you got Talia, Keith, and Hardigan all playing in the ones, and we're playing three key defensive players. But then down in the twos, Andy Otten is his career's coming to a close, and then you've got Butts, and that's it.
Now, were you asking me a question? Because someone was ringing, and if they want to try and ring again, go right ahead, because I couldn't hear them. But were you asking me something, Pete?
Just looking for your list management expertise assessment, because I feel we're a bit short of spine players developing. We've got Himmelberg, Fogarty, and Butts in the twos, and I think that all of those three players will serve us well, and they'll play AFL footy. But I think we're a bit short otherwise.
Yeah, I think you're right, mate. I think we are a little bit short. I Sorry, I've got this guy phoning in and I can't hear him. Oh dear.
Hello.
Oh, there he is.
Hello.
Hello.
I can hear you. I can hear you. Hello.
I've got
That was
more.
weird. It cut out for a sec.
There we are. Who we got here?
This is Josh.
Josh
How
from
are you?
Facebook chat. How you going, Josh?
Good, thank you. Good, thank you.
You're a bit of a champ, and I'll ask you afterwards in DMs for a place to send the Crow's cap that's coming your way.
Oh, thank you
Good to
very
have
much.
you on board, Josh. Good to
Yeah,
have you on
evening,
board,
Josh.
Yeah.
Evening, Mako. Evening, Peter.
Now, what do you reckon, mate?
Oops, sorry. What was that? Oh, I heard two questions.
You had a question, something about the spread you mentioned on Facebook.
Yeah. So I was, I was watching with my grandparents because my grandparents are Mayor fans, and we were stunned after this game because we'd essentially written ourselves off as being too slow on the outside run, and we're just like, this is like last year all over again. And we were stunned when we actually got up and won. And I was trying to figure out what was going on. And I ended up having a look at the disposal heat map for both the teams. And I just wanted a bit of an opinion. Maybe you can help me understand it a little bit. What I noticed for Melbourne in particular was that in their first quarter, their disposal heat map was right down the spine, like right down the spine of the ground, which I thought kind of made sense, because they were getting like terrific run off the half back, which was my thought, and it was just leaving us for dead. What I then noticed in the second, third, and fourth quarters was that their disposal map was often restricted to the centre of the ground, so in between the two arcs. And I was just wondering, was that a sign of our game plan starting to snap into place? And it wasn't until like the third and fourth quarter that we started to get to do that stifling thing we do. But was it starting to get into place from the second quarter, or do you think there was more to it than that?
Pete, what do you reckon?
Fiend, I reckon that's right up your alley, mate. You're a heat map
You're an
watcher.
arsehole. I'm not sure actually. It's a fair observation. I did notice that one thing that happened in the second half is that we started to handball the ball more. Our my little graph here that I'd scrape showed a definite inclination to handball the ball more. So I think we were trying to actually move the ball through their zone a bit. Whether that was part of a design to try and confine the space a little bit more defensively, I'm not sure, Josh. But what do you reckon, Mac?
Well, I did read or hear that this is for you, Josh, that the coaches just tore paid off the walls over yelling out that loud and abusing the players of not going in and not putting 100% in. And they then did make some changes as well to the way that we played, put as Gibbs being put as a tagger, for example. And I think it might have been Talia who made the comments about that he hadn't. There's been a long time since he's ever received for a long time since the team has received such a roasting from the coaches. But
That was Atkins.
Oh, really? Wow.
That was the rat that because he mentioned today the rat also lost 6 kilos in that game on Saturday night, and but also mentioned that was one of the worst sprays that they got on. Josh, I do think I think we did touch upon this just a few minutes ago, Fane, when we were talking about the fact that we were playing a lot of the game in our half of the ground, and I did feel like we were absorbing their game a lot better in the second half. Still playing a lot of the game in our defensive half, and a bit not as high up the ground. And then, really, if you think about those a lot of those goals that we got in the second half, they really were counter goals, weren't they?
Yep.
Yeah.
We weren't playing a
Yeah.
territory game at all, like we did against West Coast. We certainly didn't play a territory game on Saturday night, and that may have been just because we weren't able to. And we got so it was very much playing a lot deeper and playing a lot of the game. And as I said with Brad Crouch, 54% of his possessions in the back half, but he kicked 3 goals. So we definitely hit him on the counter in that second half.
Yeah, and I think to answer your question though, Josh, I think that there wasn't great signs of a comeback before halftime, and I think really most of it came from what happened in the halftime break, and that players had to have a good look at themselves and come out and put a much stronger, better effort and a little bit more sensible effort, and also the positional changes that were made. And as Pete and Fina both said, it wasn't really so much that we played scintillating football in the way that they played the first half. It was more like we absorbed what they had to give, and then on the rebound, we managed to work it down and eventually get a goal. So it wasn't done all that smoothly, and it wasn't done in a way that would make you say, wow, for next week. But it was at least a comeback in terms of effort. So I think that's about the best I could give it. And the fact also that the coaching staff, who, in my opinion, always react too slowly, at least did make some changes that also helped make that comeback possible. So that's my take on it.
It certainly did make me say wow in terms of the resilience. In terms of their resilience as a side, it made me say wow.
Very good, Josh.
You
got another
one more. No, so it's not a question. This is like the observation I think that tacks onto that I was thinking about was that it almost felt like in the first quarter, it felt like last year's kind of game. And then the second quarter, it felt like the West Coast game in the second half. And then in the Melbourne game second half, it felt like the second quarter for us, except just not as clean as the West Coast game. That's what it felt like in that regards. And like, I think that's what it felt like because they kept getting those chip kicks. That's what I was noticing in the second half. The way they were getting the good goals that they did manage to score was from their chip kicks over the top, connecting up players. It wasn't that blistering pace anymore that they were getting before. But that's what I was noticing. Anyway, yeah. Thank you for that.
Good man, Josh.
No, good observations,
excellent. Thanks for ringing in. And like I said, keep an eye out on Facebook. I'll catch up with you afterwards and we'll work out where to send that cap to, mate.
The other thing to note too.
Good on you, mate.
Well done, Josh.
The other thing to note is we shouldn't forget that we were down a key rotation very early on in the game in hot conditions.
Yeah.
And Matt Crouch he was out of game as well. So you got basically your two of your 3 best midfielders not playing and a key rotation down.
Yeah,
that was a big effort.
D-Mac was in.
Yeah. D-Mac had proved his fitness by wrestling crocodiles earlier in the afternoon.
Hey, if Rory Atkins lost 6 kegs, that'd be the end of him, wouldn't it? He wouldn't have much more to give.
Well, it has been commented by somebody in the chat that he lost 3 kegs by shitting himself.
That's pretty good. All right, final
good
thoughts.
In the chat.
We got GWS next week on Saturday night. What do you reckon, guys? Are we a chance, or are we running on fumes at the moment?
I think we've Lockie Whitfield's a big out for them. I think that we've just got to. We haven't had the game on our terms for about 3 weeks, or for a half we did against West Coast. We've really got to work at getting that game on our terms and playing that game that we want to play. And I think if we can do that, I think we can certainly beat them.
What's lacking in that regard? What do you think it takes to get the play back on our terms, Pete?
I think what they want to be doing is playing that territory game, that territory game camped in our forward half. I think that's what they want to do.
Yep.
And I think that and then have the defensive zone high-ish, but also with a couple of goalkeepers at the back, which
Yep.
is generally Jake Kelly. I think that's how they want to set up, and I think that's how they want to play the game. What's going to revolve around is the capacity, and I know it's just going to be repeating old cliches, but they've got to be able to win the contest. They've got to be able to, they've got to be able to win their clearances, and that's where, in the end, that's where they fell down against West Coast, is that they end up just giving up the ball around the clearance. And if you're doing that and you're camping numbers up forward, then you can leave yourself exposed.
Well, the way I see it is that they've got two classy players who of a level that we don't have, and that's in Cornelio and Kelly. And those two guys, we have to camp on them hard. Particularly Cornelio had a superb game last game. He's been struggling with an injured finger, or I think broken or something like that. But he's got every facet of the game in terms of physical side of it as well as the skill side of it. And Kelly, well, he's a Rolls Royce just gliding around. So
let's get Gibbsy on Coniglio right at the start.
That's the one I think that I would put Gibbsy
right at
on.
The start.
Yep, because Coniglio hasn't got the pace of Kelly, and the other boys, if we can definitely camp on Coniglio and then rely on our midfield to scrap it out to at least break even with the rest of the Giants' midfield. So, or get on top perhaps. So, if we do that and it works, then we can win the game. If those two boys boon for GWS, we have no hope of winning.
Well, I reckon, Pete, you hit two really crucial points, I reckon. One is getting our hands on the agate enough, and a lot's going to rely on Curley once again, and Crouchy, and Matt Crouch, if he comes in for Sloan, otherwise it's going to be pretty light in the midfield. But the other thing that was key was our lack of forward 50 pressure last week, and that ties into your observation that we like playing that territory game and locking the ball in and pushing our defence up a little bit and all the rest of it. That was severely lacking, and that was one of the reasons why Melbourne were continually able to score on the counter, because we just weren't applying enough forward 50 pressure. So it begs the question whether Lockie Murphy's time might have run out and it's time maybe to give a Tyson Stengel a run. But certainly we need to be applying more inside 50 pressure if we want to play that style of game.
Yeah, although they'll look at Richie Douglas this week, 31 possessions and a couple of goals I think he had. And I know that, that's probably going back to the past. I just think that that's what they'll do.
You're probably right. But
that'd be disappointing.
Yeah,
Lockie Murphy, I think, deserved to be dropped on his game. The question is who to bring in. And personally, I'll bring in Chase Jones.
Yeah.
He's got pace and he will have a crack.
Yeah, but you know what? What he doesn't do, he doesn't kick goals, Mac. He's kicked about 5 points so far. I don't think he's kicked a goal. I like Stengel up forward.
He's kicked a goal.
I like Stengel up forward.
But he's not going to put the pressure on that you want.
Oh, I think he might.
That's one of the reasons why Richmond were quite happy to trade him, because of the fact of a lack of pressure. And I think one of the young boys, I'd say Chase Jones. I see the suggestion in the chat from McHenry. And look, I don't know whether this is the game for him to debut in, because it's going to be a tough game. But that's probably why I would go Chase, because of the fact that he's been there before. At least he's played in games so far.
Mackie, they're going to they'll bring back Dougie. You know it.
Look, I'm saying what I think, but I think he'll probably be right.
Like and for the record, I certainly agree with the suggestions you're both making. It's just what my gut feel about what they'll stay true to form. And Dougie got his 31 and a couple of goals, and that'll be enough.
Sadly, you're a very sensible man, Pete, and usually right.
Have some more drugs, because you're making too much sense. All right. Well, obviously, we will cover the preview of the GWS clash sometime on Saturday, so keep an eye out for the rev up sometime on Saturday, depending on how quickly I can get my shit together and put it together. And until then, let's move on to, in Donkey's absence once again, and he and I are going to have words, let's move into some competition, shall we? Now, we
So
used
in
to have-
the general anaesthetic has got me, and I'm going to bail.
you going to bail?
So,
All right, mate. Thanks for coming on.
But
Ciao, matey.
and thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll catch you next week. Thanks, boys. Appreciate
goodbye.
it.
See ya.
It's signing off. We're not even done. All right. So the tipping comp. What do we have here? Tips last round. Oryx, J-Mac, Paulie C, Bayside Crow, Moyley. Oh, and Phoenix got 7. Do you know I was spewing,
So did
Macca?
I.
Do you know, Macca, I was spewing because I would have got 7 in the comp that I'm in that actually is paying money. And I must have forgotten to hit submit tips because I checked them on Saturday and I was bloody 0 for 3. I can hated
I've
that.
done that. Yeah, I did that last year. Yeah.
Yeah. Megan.
Bullshit.
Oh, yeah. Megan, Joel, Mick, Nikki, DSG on 6 last week and then the rest. So currently, things are tightening up a bit. We've got DSG and Morley on 67. Mick and Nikki on 66. Yours truly on 65. Bayside Crow on 64. And then the rest with some work to do. Now, there was a rumour, Mac, that we also had a Dream Team comp. But I must have forgotten my login because I haven't actually changed my team for about fucking 6 weeks.
Oh, God.
Needless to say, I got smashed by 14. If you can't beat me by more than 400 points at the moment, there's something wrong. But the rest of you guys, if you want to check your results, I won't bore people with it. If you want to check your results, obviously log into Sports Deck and have a look. And hopefully Donkey will be back next week to give us a little bit more of a comprehensive viewpoint. Now, Mac, we've been going for an hour and 11, so I will give you a quick sweet or smack in a second. But we're going to have
We've
to
got a
make...
few, though.
You got a few. Well, give me a second and we'll get that up and running.
Oh yes, I am a grumpy old man. That's what I am. And I really don't care who knows it. I don't.
Go for it, mate.
Okay, well, my first week goes to Brett Bolton for his contribution towards Adelaide getting pick one at this year's draft. And if we do get it, we'll never forget you, Bolts. Never. And there's another sweet to Sam Jacobs for he tweeted a great insight into the players' personalities and their pastimes. It's A-grade work by Sammy, and well done. Eddie Betts, just for being the good human being that he is. If you ever saw him up at Darwin when he went to the crowd there, just how much joy, love, and adulation they showed when he went there. I liked it, but it brought tears to my eyes actually. And last week, yeah, it did actually. Just seeing how much they local crowd there, they love him. They were just so happy with him. And Don Pike, he gets a sweet for giving Campo his blessing to apply for the Carlton job, and we're all with you, Campo. We're hoping you get it. Now, on with the smacks. Channel 7, I thought it was disgraceful the way they concentrated their camera on Sam Wiedemann. Sam Wiedemann's he played bugger all games. He was in tears on the ground, knowing that he stuffed up the game and he could have won it. It's virtually a bordering on harassment the way that camera was just stuck on him for so long, and I thought it was poor form by Channel 7.
I agree with that, Macca. I thought that was disgraceful. And I'll tell you what else I thought was disgraceful. And it might have just been the timing, I'm not sure. But when they did pan into him in the change rooms, the lad that was sitting next to him, and I don't know who it was, but he was giving him the absolute ice shoulder. And it didn't seem to me like the Melbourne boys were getting around him terribly much.
They weren't. He was isolated, and they made him look even worse. It was just shocking.
Yeah, didn't like it at all. I didn't think it was a good look. But I agree with you. Channel 7 should not have done that to the young lad. And more sensationalism from that stupid channel. And it's one of the reasons why I watch it on Fox whenever I can.
We haven't mentioned the AFL score review, how it's flopping again, and it's either always a breakdown in technology or they looked at the wrong picture. And it has been suggested that they get a central bunker where you get some pros in there that look at all the games, and they at this stage wouldn't do it because of the cost involved in that. But I think that it's getting to the stage they're going to have to do it because they can't even. That Coleman situation was ridiculous. He looked at the wrong piece of film. And the last
one.
Yeah, this is the last one. Atkins, look, you're so talented and you're so bloody stupid and you're weak and you shit yourself. So it's about time you actually pulled up your boots, just made out you were brave, at least tried to be a little bit brave. And just when you get the ball, just be direct. Just be direct, mate. Don't try and dodge around the whole field. Just, if you're going to stay on our side, at least do what the other players do. Move it quickly. How would you like to be a forward in front of this guy? What he takes a mark and you make your lead, and there it is, dodging on the spot, dancing around, and just wasting the opportunity. So, great big slap for Atkins. It's the worst 27 position game I've seen. So,
and
that's it.
Thoughts on Burton?
He's still a dickhead.
Right. Well, look, on that note, we'll wrap it up, Macca. Thanks very much for joining me, mate. I know you're a bit under the weather, and thanks also to Pete, similarly under the weather this week. No thanks at all to Donkey. He deserves a smack as well. Thanks to everyone on the chat. You know how much we love you guys on the chat. Nearly 600 comments again. They could probably get there during my long-winded outro. Thanks, Josh, for calling in tonight. That was fantastic, and hopefully we can kick that along as the season progresses. Thanks to everyone else who was listening on Facebook and YouTube. Don't forget you can pick us up on demand anytime you like on those platforms. Also, all our podcasts and video casts and all that shit are available on aflcrowcast.com. If you're on iTunes, please leave us a review or a few stars. That'd be fantastic. And thanks finally to Ryan at Smith Partners Real Estate for supporting the cast, along with Down to Earth Electrical. And a massive thank you to our patrons who support us on Patreon. If you want to support us on Patreon, go to patreon.com/AFLCrowcast or go to our website, AFL Crowcast, and click on the orange button. Do you know, Macca, that's getting longer every week.
I know, but, thanks to the boys on the chat, well, boys and girls possibly, on the chat, because I think they're outstanding with their comments, and sometimes I think they're a little bit smarter than us, but we struggle along.
They've smashed out 50 comments while we've just been crapping on.
That's how good they are.
All right, good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody, and thanks.
See ya.